Yesterday morning's attack on worshippers making their way home from evening prayers was the latest in a string of incidents reflecting a worrying rise in far-right extremism. Now, according to the Mayor of London, there were more than 2,000 Islamophobic hate crime incidents reported to the police in the 12 months leading up to this January. That figure has been steadily rising now for a decade. The rise actually mirrors a jump in the number of people reported to the government's Prevent programme. A number of far-right referrals in England and Wales, as you can see, increased by 74%, from 323 cases in 2015 to more than 550 last year. However, Islamic extremism remains far and away the most common accusation, with nearly 3,000 cases last year. That's 70% of the Prevent workload. We can speak now to Diane Abbott, the Shadow Home Secretary, who joins us, as you can see, from our London newsroom. Good morning to you. Thank you very much for joining us on the programme this morning. Can we start by asking you, how would Labour's response, how would your response be different to what we've seen from Amber Rudd in the last 24 hours?
Well, first of all, I need to say that I was at the Finsbury Park Mosque yesterday. I know the area very well. I know what both a diverse but unified area it is. And I think we have to think this morning about how traumatised that community is and how traumatised people up and down the country are. Our response would be to emphasise that the Prevent programme needs to be as much about far-right extremism as about Islamic extremism. There has been a sense in the Muslim community in the past that Prevent and counter-terrorism strategy generally was targeted on them, but we're seeing this rise in far-right extremism. It's about a year since the murder of my late colleague Joe Cox by a far-right extremist, and we do have to take these issues more seriously. We also have to give a lead in terms of the tone of the debate around Islam. Of course,
I take the point that you're making about far-right extremism, but still, as we mentioned in the introduction to speaking to you this morning, 70% of all those cases flagged up by Prevent are Islamic extremism. So we have to get things in context, don't we?
We have to get things in context, and part of the context is that far-right extremism is an issue. And if we're going to build the confidence of the Muslim community in the Prevent programme, we have to be seen to be recognising that.
OK, so what would Labour do differently? If you were Home Secretary, how would you change the strategy? How would you prevent far-right extremism?
Well, it's more challenging to deal with far-right extremism than even Islamic extremism, because you don't have community leaders to engage with. I think the emphasis needs to be on internet, online radicalisation. I agree with what the government is doing, trying to work with the big four internet companies. We need to focus on that, and we need to also focus on the tone of the debate around Islam.
What does that actually mean? I mean, how do you tackle far-right extremism simply by using those major internet companies? What actual practical measures do you take to stop what we saw happening yesterday?
It's stepping up our monitoring about what is happening online, encouraging the companies to take down some of these sites and some of this discourse, which is helping to radicalise people. They are in some cases reluctant to do that, but we know they don't want to be facilitating extremism of any kind. So we think they can do more to take down sites, to take down dialogue, and to take people off their systems who it can be seen are propagating hate and hate crime. With
respect, though, that seems exactly what the current government strategy is. So, I mean, what specific measures would you do with regard? You've brought up the point of this sort of internet monitoring. How far down that line do you go to try and stop far-right extremism?
Well, there obviously has to be a balance between freedom of speech and fighting extremism, but we need to look at that balance. I think intervening online will be the most effective way to deal with far-right extremism, and we need to see what more can be done. We need to encourage the big four companies to work with us, because why should people during Ramadan going to and from their mosque be living in fear? I believe that the focus of the Prevent programme needs to be rebalanced to recognise what an increasing problem far-right extremism is.
Diane, this is the first time we've seen you back on our TV screen since you were taken out of frontline politics just before the general election campaign for ill health. I suppose the most important question is, how are you feeling? How are you now?
I'm feeling a lot better. I'm a type 2 diabetic. I wasn't managing it, but it's a very manageable condition. It took my brother to ring me up and tell me off and tell me about the importance of eating properly and glucose tablets. But the thing I would urge all your viewers to do, because I developed type 2 diabetes later on in life, is to go and get tested.
OK, well, that's a good positive message this morning. You were heavily criticised in some quarters, and some of your colleagues, particularly in the Labour Party, said some of that was because you are black and you're a woman. Did you ever think that that criticism went into the world of sort of racism and misogyny?
You know, I think politicians complaining about media is like sailors complaining about the weather. I wasn't well for some part of the campaign, but I'm a lot better now and looking forward to working with the Labour Shadow Cabinet team to bring accountability and to bring the right policy message forward in the coming months and years.
I know you also said that some of the criticism was fair, you know, some of the sort of numerical mistakes you made, particularly in the LBC interview. I wondered, now looking back, was that related to the ill health issues, or was that stress of the campaign?
I don't want to talk about my health other than urging other people to get tested. All I would say is that my type 2 diabetes was an issue at certain points, but I've moved beyond that. I've taken all my brother's good advice, and I just want to say, in particular, I want to thank the thousands of people who contacted me with messages of support and concern and flowers. I just want to say thank you to all those people.
Well, we all need a family member looking out for us, don't we, Diane? That's great to hear. I wondered, I mean, you said it did affect you in some ways. Did you ever consider, and have you ever considered, resigning from your post because of that ill health, or was that never a consideration?
No, it was never a consideration. Everybody that has type 2 diabetes knows it's a perfectly manageable condition, and I can reassure you that I'm managing it now. That's why I'm on your programme this morning.
Well, it's good to have you on the programme, and I'm asking this because, you know, there may be a time down the line when you could be Home Secretary if Labour were in power, which is an incredibly stressful job. And if part of what we saw in the general election campaign was stress-related, has that been a concern of yours? Because if you were in that position, that's one of the most stressful jobs in the country.
Stress wasn't an issue. My blood sugar levels was, as my brother had to call me and point out. I am back to fighting fitness, and I'm back to representing the people of Hackney North and Stoke Newington, but above all, to representing the Labour Party in the debates and the battles to come.
Well, it's good to hear, and thank you for answering those questions so honestly this morning. Good to talk to you.
You didn't frankly have the balls to put country before party.